The public dose constraint, which is up to 0.1 millisieverts, is considered acceptable for the public. If this value increases from 0.1 to 0.3, then it reaches a certain limit. The place, which is licensed, or the hospital, must implement certain requirements repeatedly in order to comply with regulations on a regular basis. What if the radiation dose exceeds the established safety limit, or the international safety standards that I have are not allowed or recognized? There is a significant problem with the radiation shielding, or what exactly caused this person to be adversely affected. We had a specific case here. A pregnant patient was working with us in the field of radiotherapy, and we measure her radiation dose meticulously every month using TLD, which stands for thermoluminescent dosimeter. The TLD goes to the United States to be precisely measured and then returns because we don't have TLD regulations or facilities here. Anyway, this particular month, her radiation dose was recorded at 0.1 millisieverts permanent, which is concerning because her previous dose was 0.3, indicating an increase. She is pregnant. And it is quite strange that she has been working for a significant while without any issues, and suddenly there is a leakage or some unforeseen problem, such as a malfunction in the equipment. The important thing at that particular time was the decision that we should definitely wait until the new month's detailed report. Of course, this was indeed a mistake. You are supposed to report any significant increase within 24 hours. So, the decision that was made was to wait for the next scheduled dose and see if there was indeed a mistake in the following month, because the company had said there was an error. All of this was happening this year and was supposed to undergo a thorough investigation without being exposed to any x-rays. What actually happened was that an investigation or x-ray was indeed done this year because she was traveling through Britain and then going to the United States. This is what the company had said. So this particular dose was incorrect. We waited for the following month, and they said the dose was still unusually high. So now we have two significant problems. The first problem is that she is pregnant and knows her dose. If, God forbid, anything happens to the fetus, if something goes wrong, it will be recorded against all of us. This is number one. Number two is that the Nuclear Regulatory Authority here will tell you how you didn't report, and you could end up with a fine of 1 million dirhams or something. So of course, this could also affect your workplace. Of course, there were situations that we definitely wouldn't want to face. I mean, even the commitment to the laws and regulations, if you are not familiar with what needs to be done, it could lead to a disaster. The important thing is that from your side, you can't really do anything. Of course, we Egyptians can just change the dose report and that's it. This talk here is not just nonsense. So we had a meeting with the company in the United States and all of that. He told you that indeed the boxes that came were all because they were traveling through Britain, so there was exposure to the personal dosimeters and all the doses became higher than her actual radiation dose. We measured, of course, and checked for any leaks in the area from the bunkers that are present, and we found that there was no leakage from the city or from all of that, until she, of course, was the one who was present today because she was scared and the dose was high and she was afraid that anything might happen, especially in the first few months. She was worried that something might happen. The topic of the first months is also important. There is always concern about the baby, especially during the early weeks, which are referred to as the all or none period, meaning if there is radiation exposure, it could either affect the pregnancy or not allow it to continue at all. The first trimester, from the 3rd week to the 8th week, is a stage known as organogenesis. Here, radiation exposure for the pregnant woman depends significantly on which trimester she is in, whether it is the first, second, or third trimester, and whether she is in the organogenesis stage, has passed it, or is before it. The risk is often higher during the formation of organs or malformations during the organogenesis stage or the third trimester, which is the complete week. They often say, for example, that there is a rule called the 10 days rule. If you do not have any facility to... Pregnancy tests work. If a pregnancy test is done in some countries and is challenging, the pregnancy test is available in those countries. There was something called the 14 days rule, which was later changed to the 10 days rule, and then to the 28 days rule. They said you would calculate when the menstrual cycle started. On the first day of the cycle, you could do your scan, your CT, or your X-ray after 14 days. Then they said, no, it should be 10 days. Because you might still be in the early stages, even if there is something. So, they changed it to 28 days from the beginning. Replace the 10-day rule with the 28-day rule unless you are going to perform a test on the area close to the fetus, meaning if you are going to test the brain, or any extremities, or any area far from the region where the fetus is located, then you can stick with the 28-day rule. When is the 28-day administration cycle usually done? You can work during the save time. If there is no breakdance test, it can be done. So, when do you refer back to the 10-day rule? You refer back to it. In case the examination to be done, like the barium enema, is related to the pelvic area, which has high radiation exposure, if 10 days have passed, you must conduct a pregnancy test at the right time. This is for the pregnant patient. If we go back to the topic of LED uprun, which is a topic of interest, is LED uprun considered effective or not? The effectiveness of LED uprun is a subject of debate. Effective at 29%, that's true. And this 29% effectiveness is a specific statistic. So, is it considered effective? The consideration of effectiveness is important. In the fields of radiology and nuclear medicine, which are both important branches of medical science, is there really a difference among professionals and researchers? Does anyone have an answer? They say in radiology that it is useful, but in nuclear medicine, they say it is not useful, Dr. Islam. This is a fact. The problem with nuclear medicine is that you are always dealing with it. This issue is just to help us understand the topic. X-ray, coming from radiology, has a maximum energy of 140 kV. And as we said, the average energy is 1.3. When considering the interaction of photons with matter at a maximum energy level of 40 kilovolts, it is important to determine which effect is more dominant, the photoelectric effect or the Compton scattering. This involves analyzing the probability of each effect occurring under these specific energy conditions. As a result, your photoelectric effect is such that if I have this, and there is an interaction between the X-ray and then this, it will be the photoelectric effect. The photoelectric effect will result in a photoelectron being emitted, which will have all its energy. This electron will move as if it is a photoelectron. experiencing absorption within the material itself. Thus, I have created protection, so only 1% of this radiation will pass through in the case of radiology, in the case of nuclear medicine. I have a radioactive source that emits radiation. The radiation from this radioactive source is that which comes from technetium, the source of radioactivity. Its energy, or the energy of the emitted photons, is 140 kV for iodine and 336 kV for F18. The energy for this PET is 500 kV because the range is very high. Right. And the energies are high. So I have the computer, and the photoelectric effect is nice. Now Compton will cause scattering of photons. Right. This scattering of photons will create exposure for the worker present. That's why the efficiency of the lead apron is important. Here in the Emirates, we do not use lead aprons in nuclear medicine. Why? Because the reduction in intensity or radiation with technetium is only effective at about 60%. But with FDG and PET, it is 16%. So you might not use it in this case, while there are some experts out there. I attended a lecture by an expert at Lund University in Sweden, a very strong professor named Sigrid. She is one of the very important people in protection for pregnant women and breastfeeding. And she talks about how she wears, what she wears to achieve a reduction rate, and finds it effective for her readings. However, commonly, the more widespread and scientifically accepted view is that it is not effective in nuclear mills. So, when I get a patient and start to do a scan for the patient, the scan I am doing, if I do an X-ray on the foot, for example, is it useful or rather beneficial to put a lead apron on the area, such as, for instance, the pelvis, or on the thyroid shield, or on the thyroid area? Is this useful? Is this something we can discuss today? What do you think? Okay. Do you imagine that this removes the scattered radiation? No, it doesn't remove it. Dr. Sam's course doesn't remove it. First of all, this means there are misconceptions that exist today, something psychological. You find, especially in the Gulf, for example, in the Gulf area, the patient comes and tells you, why didn't you put the apron on the pelvis? No, put it on the thyroid. So he has the conviction that this protects you, but scientifically and correctly, the radiation coming from the X-ray will be independent. If scattering occurs, it will be internal. If this scattering happens, or backscattering in this direction, it will not enter again into the pelvis area. So if there is scattering, it will be from the inside. How will you do this from the inside? How will you remove it? You won't know. So you will find that using the American LED upright, Americans claim, but this topic has no protection at all, right? Before, if someone was pregnant and came to do a CT on the pelvis, for example, and discovered she was pregnant, she would come and say, guys, I am pregnant. What is the solution, doctors? Should we do an abortion, or what is the solution? Look, verify if she is at 0.1, for example, millisievert or not. She says, look, doctor, she will be above 0.1. I mean, the one who is coming to do the CT on the pelvis will have a certain dose with me. Indeed, this is a very important consideration.
All set. The pregnancy should not be terminated. Should be terminated?
Not be terminated. Not be terminated. Okay. As per ICRP, International Convention of Radiological Protection, ICRP 84, those who want to read about pregnancy and breastfeeding should refer to this reference, ICRP 84. It states that recommendations are made for termination.